Welcome back, America. Last month, and with great thanks to John's investigative reporting, we were able to break a story on this very show that demonstrated a money line that had been established between first son Hunter Biden and high-profile entertainment lawyer and Democrat donor Kevin Morris. And this wasn't a quick cash loan from a friend. This wasn't $5 for a pack of Pall Malls. This was a multi-million-dollar credit line between Morris and Hunter Biden in order for the first son to pay child support, tax debts, high-dollar bougie rent, amongst other items and lifestyle choices. And as you could have guessed, John's original report from last month was confirmed just yesterday as IRS whistleblower Joseph Ziegler told the House Ways and Means Committee during his closed-door testimony that the controversial son of Joe Biden did, in fact, receive almost $5 million in loans from a donor for his personal expenses. Ziegler also provided examples of how Hunter's foreign business activity with Ukrainian energy company Burisma could be linked to his father. I have an idea of one of those ways at least. Let's dive into this conversation about Hunter Biden and what we now know thanks to the IRS whistleblowers once again. Joining us now is Tristan Leavitt, the president of the Empower Oversight organization that advises whistleblowers and oversees various research. Tristan, it's a great day to have you on. Thank you for being here.
Having me.
So the folks that you represent, namely Gary Shapley and Joseph Ziegler, these guys always bring the heat, and they also bring the receipts. Yesterday was no exception. It seems that loans and gifts for anyone associated with Hunter Biden, it's kind of synonymous. But I want to set that aside for a moment because the contention that we continue to hear from the left regarding the money that has flowed through Hunter Biden, possibly to his father, to his uncle and his aunt, is that this wasn't happening when Joe Biden was in office. But we now know, and this started in 2020 when Joe Biden was a candidate, continued on through 21 and 22, 2 years into his presidency. That is one of the biggest alarms about all of this, is that this was kind of a money racking scheme while his father was in office.
Yeah, absolutely. And so for this to be confirmed, to be released by the Ways and Means Committee last night is very significant. This $4.9 million from Kevin Morris, these payments have gone on throughout the Biden presidency. And this is not something from almost a decade ago, like the Ukrainian money and the questions there. So the receipts should still be fresh. The investigative work can be done quite easily, and there are a lot of questions to answer.
Yeah. Every time we hear from the whistleblowers, we learn another dimension of just how serious the impeachment inquiry is, how serious the potential criminal and civil issues are that come up. I want to ask you about something. It seemed to me from the records last night that Joseph Ziegler was saying that the investigators, the IRS agents, believed that the reason Kevin Morris gave this $5 million to help Hunter Biden get rid of his tax debts was political, maybe emanated from the campaign, or that he himself was acting as an agent of the campaign. Could you help us understand what Ziegler was trying to say and why that's so important?
Yeah, so as you have reported on before, and as the whistleblowers have shared some information previously regarding, Kevin Morris is someone who was donating or loaning, quote unquote, money to Hunter Biden within just a couple months of having met him at a campaign fundraiser. The New York Times reports it was in December of 2019. It looks like it might have been maybe slightly earlier in November of 2019. But within just a couple of months, there were these interactions. And so what Joe Ziegler released to the committee, and it voted to make public, was records of a couple of things. One of those included a meeting in late 2020, January, which was called a crisis meeting. And it really raised these questions because the accountants for Hunter Biden were meeting Kevin Morris for the first time. He comes out of nowhere, and he is convening this meeting to talk not just about the taxes, but we don't actually fully know what, because the materials that were provided to the IRS were redacted. But when they interviewed this accountant, he said that he met Morris, that they talked about Hunter Biden, and that he was going to be supporting Biden. This came at a time when Hunter was under a lot of stress. He'd been ordered by the judge down in Arkansas to produce his tax returns, which there weren't any because he hadn't been paying taxes. And there was also a lot of pressure from Hunter's ex-wife to pay off the 2015 taxes because she wasn't able to get a passport because of that debt that existed. So this meeting at the end of 2020, January, seems very interesting. And then the other piece that was released by Joe Ziegler was from just a couple days later on February 7th. And that's where Morris emailed, "We're under considerable risk personally and politically to get the returns in." So this was right after the Iowa caucuses. It's the Friday before the New Hampshire primary. And it was clear to the investigators, as Joe Ziegler mentioned last night in the hearing, that they strongly suspected that Kevin Morris, that the campaign, was the one behind this. And of course, this helped Joe Biden by keeping Hunter's, as much out of the headlines as possible, to have paid these and gotten this out of the way. And this was of a lot of interest to the investigators at the IRS, as well as to their counterparts at other law enforcement agencies.
Amazing. Wow.
Yeah, and there are a number of people who financially support the Bidens in this fair city of Los Angeles. I want to rewind a little and go back to this. I'm not kidding. I saw her described online as a Hunter Biden art connoisseur. I didn't know there was such a thing. But Elizabeth Naftali, who was a purchaser of Hunter Biden's art, she's also involved in real estate and philanthropy. She's been to the White House at least a dozen times. And she was appointed to this U.S. Commission of the Preservation of American Culture Abroad, or whatever this commission is called. And what I found interesting is that there's another person who was appointed to this exact same post back in 2015 when Joe Biden was vice president. What's his name? Eric Schwerin. Another Hunter Biden associate. It kind of seems like positions like this are becoming participation trophies for anyone connected to Hunter Biden or even Joe.
That's a fair criticism. And of course, one of the other things that came out from yesterday's hearing was all of the communications between Joe Biden and Eric Schwerin, who managed Hunter Biden's law firm. He is rumored to have also managed Joe Biden's finances and his books, but because he has not yet been willing to sit for a transcribed interview with the House Oversight Committee, there's not a lot of detail on that out there publicly. But the IRS investigators discovered, dozens of emails between Schwerin and Joe Biden when he was the vice president, and these all came at the time of Burisma and the Shokin firing. So no question, people who are in Hunter's orbit, notwithstanding what the president said today, that it was all lies, seem to have a lot of contact with President Biden and then Vice President Biden.
Yeah, it's amazing how much visibility these whistleblowers have given us and how much they've changed the course of history. I almost certainly the sweetheart deal that prosecutors were going to give Hunter Biden would have gone through were it not for these brave whistleblowers stepping forward and illuminating us. One area that seemed to be of great interest to the Congress yesterday in this session was the time around the November and December of 2015 when Joe Biden goes over, pressures Ukraine to fire its attorney general, essentially the prosecutor general. And there seems to be enough evidence that Hunter Biden himself was worried about this prosecutor, that it was causing trouble for his client, Burisma Holdings. What were your big takeaways from the new testimony yesterday, particularly from Joe Ziegler, about Joe Biden and sort of the period of time where Hunter Biden's trying to get rid of the prosecutor and, Joe Biden does it?
Well, there's a lot of evidence that's out there separate from the whistleblower, of course, and they have seen that information, and what was out there during the course of their investigation was relevant to them. So even before as much has been reported as has now, they had seen some of the contacts between Blue Star Strategies, which was the lobbying firm that was hired by Hunter Biden to help represent Burisma.
Right.
And they had a lot of contacts with the vice president's office. And so that time frame, which again you've reported on so well, when career civil servants had recommended that Shokin be kept on, there's a period of time where there's just a switch, and the vice president's office is suddenly then recommending that he be fired. And so that period of contacts was of great interest to the investigators. They were looking closely at any of those documents they could get their hands on, and Mr. Ziegler really clearly wanted to highlight that for the committee yesterday in his testimony.
Yeah, very clearly did. Yeah.
Tristan, before we go, I want to ask you about a hot topic right now. I know that you have faithfully represented a number of whistleblowers, and especially in the last couple of years, any conversation we have about whistleblowers, well, not any conversation, but a lot of the conversations involve government surveillance. And today we saw bipartisan support behind FISA reform. I wanted to get your thoughts on it. Was it enough?
Well, it's hard to know what could ever be enough, because every reform that's been taken by Congress, the executive branch is really flouted, and part of the problem is that they don't always have insight to what's going on. Senator Lee's criticism at yesterday's hearing with Director Wray, noting that the FBI makes assurances about how they will use authorities, and then they make secret changes to it, and the FBI doesn't show Congress those reforms, is really significant. So I hope these reforms are enough. again, it's one of those things where you have to trust but verify if you could, and it's very hard to verify in this instance. So if Congress can get its hands around that piece of oversight, we'll be in a lot better position to protect the civil liberties of Americans.
Yeah, such a good point.
I think Ronald Reagan would be surprised to see what trust but verify means these days, because it's obviously a lot harder. Tristan, we appreciate you so much. We appreciate the Empower Oversight Organization and all of the work that you guys do. It's incredible work to see, and we know that we're going to have you back on again very soon. And look, for some of these other witnesses that are supposed to be coming before Congress, maybe it will be a Merry Contemptmas for them too. But I hope you have a Merry Christmas, Tristan. And don't go anywhere, folks, because we have to take a very quick commercial break. But then we will be rejoined here with South Carolina Treasurer Curtis Loftus. Stick around. We'll be right back.